I'm going to invite Maria up and I'm going to ask her a number of questions, but obviously think as well. I'm sure there is time for the audience to hand over questions to you. And I met Maria. This is funny because when we were walking here, we were thinking, how did we meet? And we didn't actually really meet. It was my co-founder of the Female Speakers Conference, her husband. Contacted you, right?
Yeah.
And then we took Maria over. I don't think you have seen him ever since, right? We hang out with Maria now all the time. She is our head judge when we do the Female Speaker Awards every year. And it just has
been demoted.
Oh, you were head judge last year. Sorry, you have been. So, yeah, Elliot has been fired.
Girl power.
I didn't tell him. So bad, but ladies and gentlemen, let's hear it for Maria. And obviously, what does Maria do? Let's have some shout outs. What do you think Maria does? Makes people famous. Speaker Bureau, yeah. And what does a Speaker Bureau do?
Makes lots of money.
Yes, what else?
Finds events for speakers.
Finds speakers for events.
So, because every time, we ask people have different ideas, and different opinions, but let's ask Maria. What does a Speaker Bureau actually do?
Right, thank you. Hello, thank you for having me. And you're a very good-looking lot, by the way. If the camera should be here that way, I think.
I'm sure she's imagining you all naked.
No. You're really smutty.
I am, actually.
No, I'm not. I prefer a cup of tea. Now, a Speaker Bureau, actually, although we're called Speaker Bureau, we're all about the client, to be honest, and we are reacting to what a client needs. So, and when I'm talking about client, I'm talking about corporates generally, and businesses, sometimes small, medium, etc. So we are reacting to what their requirement is in order for them to move their business forward, and they come to us. They might be running a conference, they might be running a workshop, some training, an away day, and they want to know who is the best match for what they want to achieve at that event. So it's actually, we don't promote speakers. There's this view that if I get onto a Speaker Bureau's books, I'm going to get promoted and I'm going to get marketed. No, you're not. You will get recommended if the right inquiry comes in. That's how it works. So that probably leads on to some other interesting topics. But that's what a Speaker Bureau really is. And bureaus tend to have a lot of speakers. So you can't actively promote everybody. And you might decide to do some work, something special with one or two that are really topical and trending and relevant at the time. But you wouldn't promote all of them. It's impossible.
Okay. And because I'm sure you have this on your mind, I've heard it a lot, from people. And I was under this illusion as well years and years ago. I would think, if I had an agent or if I would be part of a bureau, I would get gigs left, right and center. But that's not actually the case.
It's not the case, no.
Who do I have to be, or what do I have to do for you to sign me and get me gigs?
Okay, so that's probably two things in there. I mean, one is that being part of a bureau doesn't guarantee you a load of bookings at all. And a lot of times, the very challenging thing is that we are approached a lot by speakers, and many of them are brilliant, and you want to have them on the roster, but you can't give everybody, you just don't have the capacity to give everybody lots of work. What makes a speaker interesting? A speaker is interesting to me if they are answering a problem that is currently out there, if they're dealing with a topic that is trending, if they are resonating with my audience, and also if they're very clear on what they deliver and what they do. And the other thing, actually, because there's so many speakers out there, the thing that helps me is if a speaker is memorable. If I can't remember you, if you are a motivational speaker like millions of others, I'm not going to remember you. But if there's something that makes me think, oh gosh, I remember that one, I remember that speaker, that was a speaker that blah, 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 it's a lot easier for me to talk about you if I can remember you. And if you've got something that makes you unique. Yeah,
so we were talking about this the other day. Yeah. So, for example, one of our speakers, Harriet, when she spoke at the Female Speakers Conference, she had a pair of knickers. And it's not her own, they were her own, but she didn't wear them. But obviously she used them as a prop, right? But that's so memorable, still to this day. Harriet, with the knickers. And it's part of her talk on perfectionism. But what are some other things, maybe not even using props, but how can you be more goddamn memorable?
Well, you've got to have an angle. So, for example, one of the topics that we're asked for the most is if people want to know about the future. So they want a futurist or a futurologist, whatever we're going to talk about, and they want to know what is going to be happening, how can I make myself future-proof. There are a lot of futurists, so you have to stand out. So how do you make yourself unique, Andrew, in that space?
Are you a futurist then?
No, I'm not a futurist, I'm a practical futurist.
There you go. There you go. So he's made himself unique. So suddenly, so somebody says, oh, the practical future, you now know what his positioning is. So I've got an optimistic futurist, an optimist on tour, who has an optimistic view of what's happening. I have a futurist monk, which is all about sustainability and being sort of, being spiritual about the future. So if you've got some kind of, something that makes it, so I remember those amongst the sea of other futurists, those stand out for me. Are you with me? It makes it easy.
Yeah, I understand. If there any, like before, sometimes like I ask a lot of questions, but if there's anything in between, if you have another question on being memorable, ask, like just raise your arm.
But actually a great example is if you watch X Factor, Simon Cowell says this all the time. He says, I will remember you. And there's usually something different about that person. I will remember you. And that's what you need. You need to be remembered. If somebody goes away from a conference and there's been a whole sea of speakers, the one you remember is the one that will be successful. They might not be the best speaker, but you remember them because we're overloaded with information.
Can you be quietly memorable?
Yes.
You don't have to be all...
No, absolutely not. Definitely not. I mean, one of the speakers that I love, who moves me to tears every time he speaks, is a guy called Mark Pollock. I don't know if you know him, and he was blind. In his early 20s, he went blind. His retina's detached, and then he fell out of a window a few years ago and ended up paralysed from the chest down.
Wow.
And he is quiet in the way he talks. He's reflective, but he paints an amazing picture. And you'll never forget him if you hear him speak, ever. There was a question there.
Yeah, Hannah.
Your time is limited. How do we let you know that we are unique?
Right, okay, so I think that's probably the question is how do you get a bureau to take you on? Is that what you're saying? Yeah. So first of all, find out if a bureau is recruiting, because if they're not, please don't bother them. Don't bother them in the busy season.
Which is now.
Now,
right? Like
I don't know how I got out of the house. So October, November, September, March, April, May, June. It's so unless
and the rest of the year,
just leave me alone.
There's only 2 days a year.
2 days a year.
You could possibly contact them.
February 29th is a good day. No, so I think you have to do some research. What drives me insane is I will get, every day, I'll get a hi there email and I'll get a spiel of text from somebody telling me how brilliant and wonderful they are. They haven't looked at my website. They haven't seen, do I fit in this roster? Am I of that level? Am I comparable? Is there a gap? Is there somebody else there, or there are lots of people there? Where's my niche that I could be adding to? There's nothing about me. Listen, I've looked at your website, I've done some research. I can see that I would be a great fit because of this, and this. They expect everything from me. And it's like, well, listen, I'm bloody busy with, sorry, I've sworn, with clients, dealing with inquiries. I haven't got time. You've got to make it really easy for me to sell you and really easy for me to work with you. And actually the easiest way to open a door with any bureau, when you've decided on the correct bureau, because there's lots of different bureaus and every bureau is different, and we all work, you can tell the personality of the bureau by the website a lot of the time, and you can tell how they work and what kind of relationship they're going to have with you. And in fact, pick up the phone and speak to other speakers if you know them, who will tell you this is how they work, this is what they do. It's good research. I've lost my train of thought there. Where was I going?
I'm actually now thinking, because it's often, and we have the discussion a lot, and Maria also recorded a podcast with us, and I will make sure I get the link out to you, but it's very much, there's a lot of profile building we have to do ourselves, as speakers. So how, maybe, okay, 2 questions. Like, first of all, who is your highest paid speaker and why? And what did this person do, or what does someone have to do to become interesting for someone like you?
The highest paid speaker is not somebody that I think anybody should aspire to, because he is the highest paid speaker because he is unique on the planet. And that's a very difficult thing, and I'm not going to say who it is, but it's a household name, and it's somebody that a lot of people would want to meet and a lot of people admire. So that's not really attainable by 90% of speakers, or so 95% of speakers.
I'm thinking like it's either like a rock star or someone who can run really fast, like someone who has made like something out of their life. Like I will never be the fastest person in the world, nor will I ever be, you know, the Britain's next top model. But there's something, I might be actually, now I'm thinking about it. Yeah. But you know, it's how can one raise their profile? Because I know speaker bureaus, I know it's like they want people, Hannah, for example, you know, if you have 5 inquiries, and it's like, how can I possibly deal with those? This is when an agent or a speaker bureau wants someone.
That's when we're interested.
Because it's like, you can't deal with all those negotiations yourself. Let us help you. You know, yes, we take a cut, but we take this off you. So they want speakers who can sell themselves. But
well, we want speakers who are already getting booked and who are already successful. If you're coming to us, if we're going out and getting you, it's because there's a gap and we need you. And that happens a lot, that a client will come and they'll have a topic area or something that's really specific, or even a specific budget that you might not have somebody in. And so if you can't match it, you'll go out, do the research and find the right person. But generally the best kind of speaker for me is somebody who's already out there doing a great job. They want to get to the next level. They've got a load of business and they will say, look, take my business, help, you know, you handle it, take me to the next level. And that's when it works really, really well. And those speakers work with us a lot because we work in partnership.
If we take like a couple of steps back, like how can we do that?
Well, you've got to build your speaking business through all the various channels that you do. I mean, the best way to get paid to speak and to get more gigs is to be out speaking, if you're good.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm assuming that everybody's honed their message and they've got it right and they know what they're delivering.
Can we actually, who speaks already on a regular basis? I know I asked this before. And keep your hand up if every time you speak, you get at least 1 additional speaking gig from that.
And that's the objective. So if you're not getting another gig every time you speak, you haven't honed your message. You haven't honed your speech. I know that's a brutal thing to say, but that's the measure. So you've got to keep working at it. And actually, we're not really interested until you're at that level. Then we're interested. So if you're going out, you're speaking, and somebody from that audience says, actually, I'd like you to come and speak for my place, or somebody says, that was great, can you come and do this? Can you come and do that? If you're not doing that, then you need to do some work.
Yeah.
And that's brutal, but it is the measure.
And even then, like, so for example, I spoke at the IOD last week, right, at one of their members events, and someone approached me and said, hey, can you speak to my group? I emailed her and then I gave her a call. You still need to hustle then. Even if they fall in love with you there and then, they have busy lives. So it's really about having solid systems and processes, right?
Yeah, you've got to have some kind of way of getting booked, for sure. I mean, the majority of speakers on Speaker Bureau books are people who have a full-time day job. It might be that they are futurists. It might be that they are professors. They might be sports people. They might be business people. But the majority of them have a full-time job, and then they do the speaking as an aside, which is why they want a Speaker Bureau, because they don't want to have their job interfered with while they're focused. And then there's very few that are 100% speaking, and that's it. Very few. And the few that get in are spectacular.
Yeah.
They're outstanding. So but that tends to be the makeup of most Speaker Bureaus if you look at it. And so if someone's approaching me and all they do is speak, I don't want to book speakers, I want experts. I want somebody that brings some kind of expertise. Don't call yourself a speaker, please. Work out what your expertise is, and that's how you sell yourself. You're not speakers, you are experts who speak, or sports people who speak, or whatever it is that you are.
I like that, interesting. Any burning questions? like on that arena. Just ask her, she's here, we can pick her brain apart.
No, they're all right. They're okay.
That's fine there. Let's start here.
Yeah, so I'm not familiar with the process, so one question that came to mind just now is whether when you do have someone provide you with a particular speech, does anyone actually make sure that the quality, is anyone there to kind of assess that before it goes out, or is that the responsibility of the person that is taken on?
No, you don't just take anybody on. You do have to check them out before you take them on, because the idea is somebody's coming to a bureau because they want recommendations. So, I mean, the best way for me to take on a speaker, the best referral for me is a client. If a client has paid someone to speak and they're very happy, and I get a lot of, I recruit a lot of my speakers that way, and they're saying, look, Maria, have you worked with so-and-so? I really think you should. That's the best referral, because I know that's a quality recommendation. Somebody has paid good money for that speaker and they're very happy with the result. I don't particularly like referrals from my speakers of other speakers, because it puts me in a really awkward position. Because I've got a relationship with that speaker, so therefore I have to then look at that other speaker and make some kind of judgment call. And I'm either going to upset the person doing the referring or upset the person who is coming to me. And so that's really awkward, and they do it to me time and time again, because they think they're doing that other speaker a favour, but actually you're killing me. Because I've got to be, 9 times out of 10, I don't have the capacity. And then it's, not the right speaker necessarily.
Yeah. Okay, let's have...
The gentleman at the back, I think was.
How do you go about setting your fee? Not too much, not too little?
Yeah, you see, that's the hardest thing, actually. So, I mean, first of all, you need to understand, well, who's my audience? Who's going to be paying? And what sort of budgets they have, what sort of fees they tend to pay. So the corporate audiences vary dramatically. But it's really about the value that you bring. And that's the challenge, is to, when you're starting out, how do you actually quantify that? The market will set your rate very, very quickly and very easily. So, I mean, Andrew, how did you set your fee when you first started?
Depends where the location is. So someone of my bracket, I'm not a celebrity, would be 5,500 to 10,000, somewhere in there, depending on the amount of preparation required. Once you then go into Europe, you add another 5K on top of that. Internationally could be up to 20.
Do you listen to this?
I was asked what my fee was for a fee in Nicaragua, and I said $30,000, and they paid me because I asked.
Yeah.
And they saw the value. I haven't got that again, but I was gutsy enough to ask. I almost asked them, it's too much, so they could say go away, and they said yes, we'll do that, and they got value out of it. So sometimes it's a matter of asking the other question, what is your budget? And they may have a budget higher than what you were going to ask. If you don't ask, you don't get.
Yeah, I mean, part of that also is which market you're in. The UK is very competitive, so if there's a lot of people in your space, you might have to compete. If the US pays higher fees, Middle East pays higher fees, there's fewer things going on there now. But if you're travelling, yeah, you should have a rate for the UK, a rate for Europe, a rate for US, etc. And also it depends how often you want to speak. The lower the fee, the more often you'll speak. I think there's nothing wrong with speaking for, 500, 1,000, whatever. If you're speaking 5 days a week for $1,000, that's fine. And then there are people at the other end. If you're at the higher bracket, you will have fewer events, unless you are the hot topic at the moment, the current interesting person.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Because I was just thinking back, like I got my first paid gig, not because I asked for it. I've just probably been like lucky, because they hired me for this gig, and then they said to me, oh, we didn't even ask, like, how much is it? And, I was like, wow, I thought I was doing this gig for free, and ever since, like, obviously, I don't even ask people, what is your budget? I tell them my fee, and then they can still negotiate, and there's always, like, wiggle room. But I have found that, for example, here's a good example. A lot of big recruitment agencies, they run events to, raise their profile, and they are always looking for speakers. And if you are, low entry, between 400 and 800 pounds, they happily pay that. If you're not paid yet, this is a good way in. And this is from there you can build your confidence upwards, and then, you know, obviously do more of them, and then go, Maria, help me, so much business, what do I do? Please take a cut and take it off me.
But I mean, the time to speak for a lower fee is definitely when you're honing your content. If you haven't honed it yet, that's the time to do it, and that's the time to take as many invitations as you can. It's important that you are really confident, and I'm not talking about being polished like an actor and you're sort of like not sincere and authentic. You have to be your authentic self. Certainly that's what I prefer in a speaker.
Totally.
So I don't need perfection. I need somebody that I can relate to and that is authentic on stage and delivers great value.
And is memorable.
And is memorable.
She's so demanding.
I know. Yeah, it's hard work. There's a lot of competition out there. It's hard work.
And you also have to understand, like, you have been in this business for 20 years.
I started when I was 10.
I forgot to say that.
Thanks.
So, yeah, cool. You had a question here at the front.
I think you already answered that. My question was that, like you are looking for people who already have some standing, whereas my question was basically somebody like me who is now starting to come out, how do I go from there to that place that I can go to Maria and say, could you please help me take to the next level?
Yeah.
But I think you kind of answered that. Look for places where there are low-paid speeches,
And we have explored this over the years. And today, when we had lunch with another, speaker agent, we were thinking, like, there is really no way. You have to do the groundwork at the beginning yourself. There won't be a magical miracle fairy to suddenly come. Here's a speaking gig. Here's a speaking gig. It's hard work, right? But I feel as soon as you have gone into the groove with it and you have a certain system, then you can just generate gigs on a weekly basis. Easy peasy, right?
Easy peasy.
Yes.
Yeah, Maria, it's how transitioning from training facilitating to the speaking, because a lot of top speakers do breakout sessions if they're at conferences, so they're then going into a trainer mode. How do you find they differentiate themselves in that area?
Okay, I think you have to decide what kind of speaker you are. So not every speaker is going to be a keynote speaker, for example. There's certain types of speakers that work. There are speakers who are going to be workshop leaders and are going to do great breakouts, and not every speaker can do that. There's nothing wrong with that, and there's a great market for that. You might be a plenary speaker, so somebody speaking during the conference. You might be an after-dinner speaker. You need to know where you fit. Some people can transition from different places, others can't. You might be an inspirational speaker. So, the way I define the difference between a motivational speaker and an inspirational speaker, for me, a motivational speaker motivates you to take action. Motivation to take action. And an inspirational speaker will inspire you to think differently. For me, good speakers will do one of three things, or all three. They'll make you think differently, feel differently, or act differently. If you can do all three, then you're great. But I'm sort of going off-piste here. There is a great market for the workshop speaker, for the breakout speaker, for the trainer. You probably want to do the other bit as well, where you're actually speaking so that you can more or less introduce the workshop and the training through the speaking.
Yeah.
So you then get more work.
Professionals who speak.
Yeah, exactly. And then what you can do, of course, is have a longer program with somebody, because people may have a program of training.
Yeah, and it's a lot of networking at the beginning, right? Like meeting the right people, being nice to the right people. Rashma.
So my question was that, do you have any evergreen speakers? Because you mentioned topical, so does the speaker have to keep evolving, or once they're out of fashion, what happens then?
Die. They send them to the slaughterhouse. Yeah. You will never be hired again.
Yeah, there is an area that is evergreen, and when I tell you, it's obvious. Anything to do with people is evergreen. So anything to do with leadership, with team, with motivation, but obviously you've got to stand out in that. Anything to do with people and getting the best out of people is evergreen. I also think the future stuff, actually, for me, is very strong. The economy stuff's very strong, but anything to do with people, that's the biggest area always. But there's the biggest competition in that area too.
Do you, because you work with so many different speakers, like, I'd love to hear some more examples on how to be memorable. If you can come
all
up
right.
with some.
So let me give you some. So if I'm speaking to a client and they say to me, we have issues with communication and issues with listening, for example, the speaker that immediately comes to mind, and I don't even need to say his name, and it makes it even better actually if you don't say names and just say, listen, I've got a guy who's a former hostage negotiator. If I have my teeth in, former hostage negotiator who talks about life and death listening. Wow. But what he does in a session, he will actually have someone come in and take a hostage. And it's usually the senior person in the room is taken hostage, and then the audience have to save him. How? By listening. Wow. By listening. And for me, that's incredibly memorable. I think it's very different. And I don't even need to remember the speaker's name. The client doesn't need to remember the speaker's name. The client's bought into the concept and the idea. So when they come back and say, oh, Maria, I want the guy who does da 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 da, it's a lot harder for a client to remember a name than it is to remember that idea.
Yeah.
So another one is an former international poker player who will talk about economics. And the parallels with economics and poker are just fascinating. And it's like, wow, that's mental, but it works.
Yeah. I'm
trying to think of some other ones now, but I mean, there's lots of things like that. If you can be remembered without having to have the name mentioned, then you know you've got it. You've got it. That tagline is so important.
Yeah. So there's your homework. Finding this little bit of an edge.
And you can keep changing it and developing it and honing it and seeing what resonates, but you need to talk to your audience. What you need to be doing is talking to the people who are likely to book you to find out what their language is and use their language and their vocabulary back at them so you resonate. And that's the hard part, to be able to find where do they hang out, where do they communicate, how can I get, what do they read? And read the same things that they'll be reading so that you can see what the things are that are topical for them.
Cool. And so if you think about monetizing your speaking, would you have a couple more tips on how people can do that? And what is really important, actually, that hasn't even come up yet, but what do you need, because I know the answer, to make you cash in a higher fee? Like, what is one of the things you need?
You know the answer?
Yeah.
Okay, what's
because
the
you keep banging on about it. It's you. Just don't want to take your words out of your mouth. Exactly.
No, well, I might rephrase that if you don't mind and say it's about making yourself easy to book. You need to be easy to book. So put yourself always, every time you do anything, put yourself in the client's shoes. Who is my audience? Who's my client? Who's going to book me? They don't know you from Adam. What's the easiest way for them to book you? The easiest way is for them to see you speak. That's the easiest way. That's not always possible. So have a showcase, invite them, talk to them, give them some value, give them some content, so they've seen you speak. If you can't do that, video is the next best thing. And I am amazed at how many speakers come to me and apply, and they send me their reams of email. And my first reaction, I can't be bothered to read it all, to be honest with you. I just reply, please send me a video. Oh, I'll have one in a few weeks. Why are you contacting me? How am I supposed to judge a speaker if I can't either come out and see you? Because the next question is, when are you next speaking? Oh, well, I haven't got any speaking gigs where you can see me. Just so the video is vital if you're not actually out there speaking already and somebody can see you. I tend to collect speakers when I go and see them. So when we had the Women's Speakers Conference, there was one speaker on that agenda that had me on the edge of my seat. Literally, I was like, oh my God, this has just like blown me away. And I immediately went and said, right, I want you. That's when it's interesting for me, when somebody does something that's a bit unique and a bit different.
Yeah, nice. And I think often we start overcomplicating it. So I personally, I don't have a speaker reel, which is, snapshots of you at different gigs. I just have footage where I spoke for 20 minutes or I spoke for half an hour. And I personally, at Speak Express, we run a bureau as well. Obviously, it's a tiny fraction of what we do, but you prefer a really well-made speaker reel.
I prefer a show reel personally.
I prefer footage. Whenever I sell, people to my client, they just love to just see them for 15, 20 minutes. And It's just
The
preference.
reason I prefer a showreel is because the clients that I work with are considering several speakers at once. They're not looking at just one.
Yeah.
So if I'm sending 5 or 6 speakers, sometimes the shortlist is like 20. It's ridiculous because they end up with committee decision makers, which drive. We've got one at the moment where it's happening, where there's like, and I know who'll get chosen because I know who's got the best reel. And I had this recently with a very senior guy from a retail organisation, household name. So you go through the levels, and we shortlisted. We knew exactly who should that client should book. But this guy didn't have a reel. He didn't have good video, but he was the right person. And we struggled to convince them, the top guy, because he's saying, I'm not going to start wading through this, that, and the other, unless you've got decent video. I haven't got time. So for me, if I'm sending 5 or 6 people, if I've got show reels that are around the 3-4 minute mark or less, which is great, that makes my life easier, but it makes the decision maker's life easier. And a show reel for me has to stand alone. It has to have all the elements in there that I, as the decision maker, need to see. So it needs to tell me what's the expertise before you even open your mouth. But then the speaking has to start pretty fast. And it doesn't have to be lots of different videos. It can be one
Just a
speech
really
where
nice
you're cutting the main
yeah.
things, the big messages that I, as an audience, as a booker,
Yeah.
I'm hearing. And I need testimonials, third-party testimonials, ideally from the peers. So I could go on about show reels all day.
Nice.
Yeah, thank you. What would be the next step for someone who would want to work with you?
To work with me?
That's right,
Yeah, go and get yourself a load of bookings, get overbooked, and come and say, Maria, please handle them. Please handle my business. So, really.
There was one more question.
Yeah, there was that one there and one there, I think.
Yeah, I mean, you say you could go on about show reels all day and they should be 3 or 4 minutes. I'd be really interested, perhaps not now, but to see exactly what you want in that show reel, because I sent a show reel to Annik, it's 15 minutes long. Now, it kind of told the story, so it told the story of how I got to the punchlines. If I think, well, I just deliver the punchlines, and
you know what I do? So Maria has a group on Facebook, and it's called Speaking Business. I will send that link out because there are how many? 4?
We've done 5. So the showreel thing
There are 5 examples in there.
came up quite a few times, okay. And people were asking me to review their reels and to give them feedback, and they were asking me, please give me an example of a good reel. And the only reel I had that was a good example was like 15 years old. And it was embarrassing. It was embarrassing. So I thought, you know what, we're going to do it. So we did a showreel day, and we took 5 people, and they were very brave individuals because they really went through the mill. Because part of creating a showreel isn't about just creating that reel. It's about understanding how does that fit with the rest of your speaking business. How does it fit with all the other material that you've got out there about you? How does it who's going to be watching that reel? How are they going to look at it? Where are they going to be watching it? On what, in what format and what type of people you please. So there's a whole load of stuff to do around that. Yeah. And what do you want them to do after they've seen the reel? So if you're aiming at a bureau, if you are with a bureau, you don't want contact details on the end. I really don't want contact details on the end. But if you're actually selling yourself and it's on your website, you do. Yeah. So there's lots of different things there.
Entire science on itself, amazing. Yeah, so I will make sure I get this out to you tomorrow. And did you want to ask a question, Abigail?
So my question is literally, you said that we should read what you read to understand how you think and speak. So what do you read?
Sorry?
I'm not sure either.
I'm not sure I follow that.
I think you meant what do your clients read?
What my clients read. Yeah, not what I read, what my clients read. So whoever's going to book you, what are the magazines they read, the journal, so if they're reading, if they're technology, if they're into, FT, so if they're into technology, they might be reading Wired, and you might want to subscribe to that and see what's going on, what the topics are there. It might be the Harvard Business Review. I don't know the answer to that because I don't know who your end clients are. But if you can understand what the topics are that they're looking at. So, I mean, we were talking about blockchain way before there were any speakers on blockchain because our clients were already there. They were already pushing the boundary. And we were talking about, there was somebody else I was talking to about this. We were talking about 3D printing. I mean, years ago. So normally you're ahead because the clients are ahead and you've got to stay ahead with them.
Nice. Okay, so a few more tips on, because, you know, yes, we hinted it, but like to summarize, like what are, tomorrow morning, what's tomorrow? It's tomorrow? Thursday. Tomorrow morning, I don't know how long you sleep, let's say 10 o'clock. What are 3 things people can do, you know, to really get cracking and really build their own profile and make themselves more interesting for speaker bureau owners like you?
I would take a step back actually first before you do anything and be sure that the value that you bring is obvious and that you have an audience that wants to pay for it. Because it's all very well having a topic that is your area of expertise and you're brilliant at that, but if there isn't an audience that wants to pay for it out there, then you're barking up the wrong tree. So we had an interesting scenario where we had 5 people that we did showreels for. 2 of those people are no longer talking on the same stuff they were talking about before.
Okay. Wow.
So they've gone for a complete transition because there wasn't an audience for it. Now, that's difficult to do, but it's probably the most important thing to do.
Cool.
If you want to get paid. If you want to speak because you want to move people and you want to change how they feel and it's not about getting money, it's a different thing. But if you want to get paid,
you can talk about your cats and anything.
No, but there's a great value in the storytelling and all that. And if you're talking about your business and promoting your business, that's a different thing. But I would think take a step back and be sure that you resonate with the audience. You're using their vocabulary, using their language. Find out where they hang out. Do some research, and then once you've got that, hone your content. Be clear on the value that you deliver. And go out there and, you know, keep speaking so that you can then get... And if you end up speaking for free, by the way, guys, and I've said this before, speak for free, but send an invoice of what your fee would be and then send a credit note. Because if you're speaking for free, so say, for example, I had done that with Annik and sent her my invoice and a credit note. If you were my customers and one of you went to Annik to say, actually, Maria, who you had as your guest, was really interesting, how much does she charge? She's going to say, oh, well, this is her fee is blah, 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 blah. She's not going to say, actually, we didn't pay her, it's nothing. Because what you've got to do is start getting people to realise what the value is that you bring and start thinking about that. And because you're going to hone it, by the time you've honed it, somebody's going to come along and want to book you as a result of having heard you, and they need to know what the fee is, the correct fee.
Totally. Thank you. Now, what I'd love you to do, obviously, we will at some point, we will take a break, and then you can flood Maria with more questions. But really quickly, with the person to your left or to your right, what is one big takeaway? Something you will be implementing 10 o'clock tomorrow morning.